also widespread. For days, medical staff within the hospital told CNN they couldn't even move between buildings on the complex for fear of being targeted by Israeli snipers. Every day a patient would die, Nurse Musa says. The occupation soldiers used us as human shields inside the hospital. More than 300 bodies have so far been recovered, according to authorities in Gaza. But that figure will likely only rise. Warnings that Al-Shifa could soon be turned into a graveyard, now a gut-wrenching reality. Neda Bashir, CNN, London.
CNN has reached out to the IDF for comment. And if you would like information on how to help with humanitarian relief efforts for Gaza and Israel, please go to cnn.com/impact. You will find a list of vetted organizations providing assistance. That's at cnn.com/impact. And we'll be right back.
Blames Israel for the strike which killed a senior commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, his deputy and 5 diplomats. Israel's parliament has passed legislation that could see the closure of foreign broadcasters in the country, including Al Jazeera. The government has been pushing the law since the start of the war on Gaza. And an Israeli airstrike in central Gaza has killed 7 aid workers from World Central Kitchen, most of them foreign nationals. The charity says its team had coordinated with the Israeli army and its vehicles were clearly marked with the group's logo. Well, Al Jazeera's Hind Al-Khodari is in Deir al-Balah, where that attack on World Central Kitchen employees happened. She reports from the scene.
I'm currently standing in front of one of the vehicles that has been targeted by the Israeli forces last night. This car and 2 other cars across the Al-Rashid Street have been targeted by the Israeli forces. 3 of the cars are for the World Central Kitchen, and they had aid workers inside the cars. So far we know that an Australian, a Polish, a British, a Canadian and an American and a Palestinian aid workers were targeted in those 3 cars. It's very obvious that these workers were working with the World Central Kitchen, as we see vests and the logos of the WCK organization. We know that these cars were on their way back from the port northern of the Gaza Strip to their guest house in Rafah, and every car is separated by at least 500 meters, which shows that this convoy was directly targeted by the Israeli forces. This
a decisive
will have a lot
after what it says was an Israeli missile attack on its consulate in Damascus, Syria. 2 top Iranian military commanders are among the 7 people killed. More now from CNN national security correspondent Natasha Bertrand.
Iran says its consulate in Damascus, Syria was attacked by Israel on Monday, leaving at least 7 Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps officials dead, including 2 senior commanders. Now, Iran's ambassador to Syria said the building was targeted with 6 missiles from Israeli F-35 warplanes, but the Israelis have neither confirmed nor denied responsibility for the strike, which has raised fears of an escalation in the region as Iran has vowed to respond decisively. Now, a spokesperson for the Israel Defense Forces, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, told CNN that he would not comment on the attack other than to say that according to Israeli intelligence, the building that was hit was actually a military building being used by the IRGC rather than a civilian consulate. CNN cannot independently verify either Iran or Israel's claims, but State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said the U.S. has been in touch with regional partners to determine what happened here, and he reiterated that the U.S. does not want to see the conflict between Israel and Hamas escalate beyond Gaza, but it remains to be seen whether and how Iran will retaliate here. Iran-backed proxy militias who were attacking U.S. forces in Syria and Iraq almost daily up until February have not launched any new attacks in nearly 2 months. But the concern now, of course, is that that could change now that Iran is vowing revenge. Natasha Bertrand, CNN, Washington.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he is temporarily shutting down news network Al Jazeera's operations in Israel. On Monday, Israel's parliament approved a law allowing the government to shut down foreign networks deemed a threat to national security. Netanyahu posted on social media that, quote, terrorist network Al Jazeera will no longer broadcast from Israel. Israel has claimed the network played a role in the October 7th attacks. Al Jazeera says Netanyahu has provided no legitimate proof of that claim. It also says he's jeopardizing its reputation as well as the safety and rights of its employees. Pressure is mounting on Netanyahu. Thousands of protesters took to the streets of Jerusalem again on Monday, calling for his resignation and demanding new elections. They blame Netanyahu and his government for failing to secure the release of the remaining Israeli hostages being held in Gaza. It's the largest protest the country has seen since the start of the war. Dozens of demonstrators were also camped outside the Israeli parliament. They are planning to stay there until Wednesday when the spring recess begins.
They are not concerned about what happens in the country and with the people. They are concerned about maintaining the position in the government. They work for themselves, not for the people. That's simple as that.
Meantime, some Israelis say they're so upset by what they have seen and heard of IDF actions in Gaza that they would rather go to jail than to war. CNN's Melissa Bell spoke to one man on his final day of freedom.
In Israel, too, there are those who object to their government's handling of the war in Gaza. Among them, Ben Arad, who as an 18-year-old is due to enlist this week for his mandatory military service. Instead, he tells the crowd he's choosing to go to jail. We caught up with him in Tel Aviv on his very last day of freedom.
I don't refuse because I'm afraid of being hurt or killed in military action. I have a very, very deep disgust of the things that I'm seeing happening.
Things, he says, that Israeli media doesn't dwell on, but that he seeks out on international networks and online.
I think something that really broke my heart was the flower massacre. So seeing people trample each other to get food, I mean, you just can't deny at that point that there is a famine going on and people are hungry.
So on Monday, Ben will hand himself in, becoming one of only a handful of so-called refuseniks to make their decisions public since the war began. In a country where military service marks the start of every Israeli's grown-up life, aside from those exempt on religious grounds, the war has made avoiding it a political act.
I've been called a traitor. I've been told that I need to be deported, or I've been asked why I don't just move. I mean, but it's not such terrible stuff. I haven't gotten that yet. Like, I'll get that when I go to jail.
Yet Ben says he's determined to give up his freedom in order to remain free of a war that he simply doesn't believe in. Melissa Bell, CNN, Tel Aviv.
A group of anti-Kremlin activists say they successfully committed a major breach of Russian security by hacking into computer networks tied to Russia's prison system. The activists told CNN they were avenging Alexei Navalny, the Russian opposition leader who died in an Arctic penal colony in February. The hackers were able to steal a trove of data on hundreds of thousands of Russian inmates and their relatives. They also say they broke into the state-owned online system where family members buy food for inmates and temporarily slash the prices of goods. Sean Mingus has more details.
CNN is reporting exclusively on a big breach of the Russian prisoner system, in which hackers claim to have stolen data on about 800,000 prisoners and their contacts to avenge the death of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny.